Hello, I'm continuing my reviews on the Star Trek movies with Star Trek Nemesis. Now, Nemesis is the 10th film in the Star Trek franchise, but this is the 4th and final film of the Next Generation series, and this is actually held by a lot of people to be one of the worst Star Trek movies. I saw a review for this movie where the guy said that this was actually his least favorite, and there are some people who hold this up there with Insurrection and Star Trek V. Now, the one thing that this movie is known for doing is it basically breaks the whole odd and even thing with the Star Trek series, because a lot of people consider the odd-numbered Star Trek movies to be the bad ones, and they consider the even-numbered ones to be the good ones. This is one of the even-numbered Star Trek movies, and yet this is still considered to be one of the bad ones, so this movie pretty much breaks the whole odd and even thing with the Star Trek franchise, which I never really agreed with to begin with, but like I said, this is considered to be one of the worst ones, but I'm probably in the minority with this movie, but I actually don't hate this movie, and I actually do like this movie. I mean, I see that this movie does have a lot of problems, but for the most part, I really don't hate this movie, and I actually think this movie has a lot of really cool ideas. I mean, the movie definitely borrows a lot from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, and Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. If you saw the end of this movie, and if you saw the end of Wrath of Khan, you could see where this film is drawing a lot of parallels with Wrath of Khan, and also this movie draws a lot of parallels with Undiscovered Country, because in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, you saw the Klingons and the Federation finally start to become allies after years of being enemies. In this movie, by the end of it, you see the Romulans start to become allies with the Federation, so the film definitely draws a lot of parallels from both Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, but, like I said, this is held by a lot of people to be one of the worst ones, and this is even held to be one of the worst ones by a lot of the cast members of this movie, LeVar Burton, who plays Geordi in the movie. He, I know, doesn't like this movie, and I know a lot of cast members really didn't like this, and apparently the director of this movie has never even seen an episode of Star Trek, which definitely doesn't help when the person directing a movie that's based on a TV series has never even seen an episode of the source material, overall, though, I mean, I see that this film has problems, but I really don't hate this movie, and like I said, I think this movie does have a lot of really cool ideas. So the plot of Nemesis is, it revolves around an alien race known as the Remans, who are from a planet known as Remus, and Remus is the twin planet of Romulus, where the Romulans are from, and the Remans have for years been used as slaves by the Romulans, and they're pretty much considered to be like the outcast of Romulan society, and what happens is, it turns out that the Remans are now being led by somebody called Shinzon, and Shinzon even tries to join forces with the Romulans to go attack the Federation, but the Romulans refuse, but Shinzon does manage to get a few Romulan followers who he ends up having them assassinate the entire Romulan council, and essentially Shinzon is now in command of all that now, and what happens is Shinzon's ultimate goal is to destroy Earth and cripple the Federation, but what happens is Shinzon goes to meet with Picard, claiming that he wants there to be peace with the Federation and the Remans and the Romulans, but what happens is when Picard and some of the other members of the crew of the Enterprise first meet Shinzon, they're shocked to discover that Shinzon is actually not a Reman, but is actually a human, and it turns out that he's actually a clone of Picard, and like when Picard meets him, he's shocked to discover that Shinzon looks just like him, looks just like he did when he was a teenager, and basically, Picard eventually finds out what Shinzon is actually up to, and now the main plot line of the movie is Picard has to stop Shinzon, and and that's the main plot line of the movie. But the movie gets into the whole nature versus nurture debate, like, do we really choose who we are, or are we just shaped by our environment? And Shinzon, I actually thought was a pretty interesting villain. I know they were definitely trying to make him almost like the next Khan, and he's definitely not as good as a villain as Khan, but I did think he was an interesting villain, and you actually did feel kind of sorry for him, because basically Shinzon, he was made as like a failed military project. Like, basically the Romulans somehow got a hold of Picard's DNA, and they made a clone of Picard, which they called Shinzon, and what happens is they were going to use him to eventually try to replace Picard in the future, but the project was abandoned when Romulus came under the control of a new government, and they pretty much sent Shinzon to live in the mines underground on the planet of Remans, where he was pretty much raised by the Remans, and he spent most of his life working as a slave in the mines on Remans. So what happens is, like, you really get the idea that Shinzon was made the way he is because of his life, and you get the idea that maybe if things were different, maybe he could have turned out to be a different person. And, like I said, it gets into the whole nature versus nurture debate, and you actually do feel some sympathy for him. Obviously, it doesn't excuse what he tries to do, but you definitely feel sympathy for him, and there's actually a pretty good character moment between Picard and Shinzon, where it's before Picard realizes what Shinzon is up to, and they're both having dinner with each other, and and Shinzon's like asking Picard questions about like the Picard about the whole Picard family, and it's actually a really good character moment, which makes everything that happens between them throughout the rest of the movie actually kind of heartbreaking, in my opinion. And and Shinzon is actually played by Tom Hardy, who would later go on to play Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, and I thought Tom Hardy did actually a really good job in the movie. Ron Perlman is also in the movie. He plays a Reman, and he's basically like almost like a secondary villain in the movie. But what was I gonna say? Also in the movie, there's kind of a subplot where they find an android, which is essentially an earlier model of the same type of android that Data is. So essentially this android which they find, which is called the B4, is Data's brother, basically. There's kind of a subplot about that, but overall, like, I liked Star Trek Nemesis. I think this movie does have some good ideas. Like, I like the whole nature versus nurture debate in the movie. I like the relationship between Picard and Shinzon. They probably could have done a little more with that, but I liked the whole idea that, Shinzon could have turned out differently if things were different for him, but, yeah, Star Trek Nemesis, I definitely wouldn't say it's one of the best Star Trek movies, but I definitely wouldn't call this one of the worst ones. Yeah, that's my review on Star Trek Nemesis, and bye.